I'm Chip Freud, and this is the Artist Spotlight, conversations with contemporary artists based on 5 simple questions that explore the artist's journey, creativity, and sources of inspiration. Welcome to another episode of the Artist Spotlight with Chip Freud. Today I'm joined by Dan Campbell. Dan is a Raleigh-based artist who is a painter, works primarily in acrylics, whose subjects range from landscapes and animals to the luminaries sports and music, yet all are uniquely Dan, exhibiting bold, sweeping brush and palette knife strokes and vibrant use of color. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here, Chip. Thanks for the invite.
Well, as I think you know, the way this starts off is you should tell us a little bit about a current project you're working on, something maybe you just finished or something you're getting ready to do.
Excellent. And you said mostly acrylic. I do some oil and cold wax as well, in addition to doing acrylic pieces. I go back and forth, just keep myself from getting too bored with one particular medium. But
excellent.
But in terms of current projects right now, I am painting like a madman because I've got my upcoming show this coming weekend. It's the 7th annual Holiday Art Showcase. I've been doing this thing I've been painting professionally for it's about to be 10 years in 2023 when I decided to go full time. And one of the most successful things I've ever done is to hold my own open house at home during the holidays. And it's usually the first week. It's the first week this year of December, first weekend of December. So it's this December 3rd and 4th, and it's right here at my house and in my gallery that we bought a house about a couple years ago that came with an external building that we converted into a gallery / studio, which has been wonderful. And so part of the open house, part of the showcase is held there, and part of it's in the house. But we just have a wonderful time. We invite all of our art-loving friends and people that I've known for years and people that I've met recently, and it's just an open invitation. And we have lots of refreshments and drinks and little live music also, both Saturday and Sunday, and lots of art. I'll have over 50 paintings on display. So that's always the exciting thing at the end of the year, fourth quarter. And I'd have to say that's the biggest project of the year. So that's what's happening there.
Well, you got your hands full, both in terms of being an artist and producing the work, as well as being the host of a pretty darn big party, it sounds like.
It is. Thankfully, my wife is the hostess with the mostest. And so she's cooking up sausage dip and all kinds of fun snacks to eat. And so, she's the CEO of the party, if you will. So she pretty much tells me what to do and when. So fortunately, I've got an organized spouse that keeps me on track.
Excellent. Well, I can relate to the party and cooking spouse. My wife Susie has similar skill sets. So.
Yep.
So the first of our questions is, what is your earliest memory of making art of any kind?
Well, that's easy. I was a big comic book fan as a kid. And around about 6th grade, my grandfather would, and at the time we lived with my grandmother and my grandfather in Texas. And my granddad would pay me a dime every time I mowed the grass. And so I would take that dime and go down to the corner store. And back in those days, you could actually buy something for a dime.
Yeah.
And I would buy a comic book. And I got into the whole hero thing: Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, the Justice League, the whole 9 yards. And they were my heroes, and I loved the art in the comic books. It was graphically incredibly vibrant, lots of bright colors, lots of really cool cartoon drawings, um, and I eventually started trying to draw those characters. And so my initial foray into art was because of comic books, and that ended up years later. I just kept drawing and drawing, and I lived with my aunt then for a little while. In ninth grade, she gave me my first set of oil paints. She was an oil painter, and her daughter, my cousin Becky, loved horses and was always drawing horses. So that got me drawing animals and horses right along with her. And so I started, drawing the characters in comic books and wildlife and just a variety of subjects. And to this day, it's allowed me to sort of have the breadth of being able to paint a lot of different subject matter.
Oh, great. You're the first artist to mention comic books, but it makes sense because they're an art form in a sense that is geared toward the youth, right? We all looked at them, and they got a subject for everybody.
That's right, and they were just incredibly fascinating. So it captured my imagination, and off I went. And my family moved around a lot when I was young. I was telling you, I lived with my grandparents for a while. I lived with my aunt for a while. My parents were both married several times, and so art was always this thing I could take with me no matter where I was, no matter where I moved to. And I went to 18 different schools before I graduated from high school.
Oh my!
But one of my best friends was being able to take art with me, and no matter what was going on in my life, I had that. And so it was a stabilizer also in my life. It kept me grounded to some degree.
Excellent. It's a powerful story. Thank you. So how did you've shared a bit of it already, but how did you come about your work with acrylics and oil and wax? So what brought you to those media in particular, and why?
Cool. Good question. And I studied commercial art in college for 2 years. And before I at that point, this is like late 70s, early 80s, before I figured out that I didn't want to work in somebody's agency as a commercial artist. And we got married young. My wife and I were married I was 19, she was 18.
Ooh.
So we also had the responsibility of, having jobs and all of that early on. So I dropped the commercial art thing, and I'm making this a little bit longer story, but and I was also a sports guy, and I got invited to start working at a local sports club, which in the early 80s, that was absolutely taking off. The health clubs, aerobics, fitness, all of that stuff was exploding, racquetball. And so I was lucky that I got with a really progressive organization, and I carved out a career in that industry and ended up being on the corporate side of it for many years. I was in that industry for over 25 years. So art took sort of a background hobby type thing in my life. I do Christmas gifts for family and that kind of stuff, but nothing real serious. And for about a decade after I got out of that industry, I did some consulting, management consulting and strategic planning type consulting with companies. And I lost, after about a decade, I lost a consulting contract and came home licking my wounds and going, okay, do I want to keep doing what I'm doing? Because now I need to find another client, another contract. And it was just this incredible almost a spiritual thing that I was sitting by myself and the light just came on. And I asked myself that, $64,000 question as you're looking at your life from up above yourself. If I could do anything, what would it be? And as I asked myself that question, I reviewed my whole adult career of being involved in marketing and being involved in business. And I had learned quite a bit about that, and that, obviously how important that is to any business. Mm-hmm. And realized as I took inventory of myself, took stock of myself, that what I loved more than anything was being able to create and be able to create art. And all of a sudden it hit me like just a ton of bricks. What if I could market my own artwork? And I hadn't painted a painting like I paint now ever. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I have messed around with acrylics before, watercolors, pastels, but never really, again, very seriously, and never offered anything up for sale to anybody or anything like that. And my wife came home from work that night, and I said, honey, the light came on. I know what I want to do. And I think I want to create paintings that people might actually want to buy. And she said, well, you're a decent artist, but maybe you should try that part-time. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, let's make a deal. Because I have a feeling down deep in my heart that if I threw myself into it full time, it would make a big difference from being a part-time artist. Yeah. There's a big difference in what you immerse yourself in versus what you sort of do on the side, right? I wasn't looking for a side hustle. I still needed to make a living. I was 56 years old at the time and certainly not ready to retire. We're still not retired. And so I said, well, how about if I try this for 6 months and let's see what happens. And if I can make a buck or two and can sort of figure out how to make this thing work, I'd like to try it. And she said, okay, let's go for it. And I started painting acrylic paintings at that point. I picked acrylic because I was already somewhat familiar with it. I had tried the medium. It's easy to use. It cleans up with water. It's not that expensive. The materials, at least at that point, weren't very expensive. And so I started exploring acrylic painting. And I thought I really wanted to be more of a sort of an abstract artist. And being a musician also, I've played guitar all my life. I thought, I think I'll try to combine this music thing with the art thing and create some sort of abstract music paintings, like abstract guitars. And so that's what I first started doing. I kind of combined the two things that I love the most, and I created 9 abstract guitar paintings. And I'm thinking, like a good marketer, maybe this is a niche I could explore. Mm-hmm. And I went to see, like any smart business person would do, not that I was all that smart about art, but I did know one thing, and that is that feedback is the breakfast of champions. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm thinking, I've never sold a painting in my life. Let me go take these paintings and show it to somebody and get their perspective, somebody who's in the art world. And so I did that. That was my next step after creating these 9 paintings. Still hadn't sold anything, but went to the gallery, talked to the gallery owner, an Asian man. He stood back and looked at those paintings, and seemed like maybe it was only 5 minutes, but it seemed like an hour to me before he said anything. And I'm thinking, oh boy, here it comes. And he looked at me and said, "Now that painting there and that painting over there, I'd put in my gallery right now." I was like, "Yes, that is awesome. That's great to hear." And he said, "Now I don't know what the heck you were doing with this one over here. This is basically you need to start over with that one." So he kind of got my feet right back on the ground there.
Yeah.
But anyway, that being said, that's how I got started with acrylic. Roundabout way to answer you, and kind of what I did with the first steps of getting started as an artist. And so anyway, that oil came much later. As I got more into doing more portrait type work, which I never thought I would be creating paintings of people, even though I'd done my comic book characters and that kind of stuff when I was younger. I just, in my mind, I didn't think I was good enough to do that. And it's a phrase that I've learned to say, and to other artists who don't think they can do certain things. This phrase that sticks with me is that you don't know what you can do until you do it.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
And so anyway, that was a little bit about how I got started and why I picked acrylic. And then I moved on to, I kept getting asked to paint things from people I knew. Once people found out that I was an artist, they said, "Oh, can you paint my daughter and our family dog? Can you do a pet portrait? We just got back from Africa. Can you do a painting of a safari of elephants that we saw?" I kept getting asked things, and I've never been good at saying no. And so I just said, yeah. And then I figured out how to do it, and stylistically the way I knew how. And it allowed me to explore because of all of these different things I was asked to paint. And some artists decide they don't want to be a commission artist. And I understand that. I understand that, we all love being able to create what we want to create, whatever is in our soul that needs to come out. And fortunately, I've found some ways to be able to do both.
Mm.
And so now it's easy for me. In the beginning, I wasn't so good at saying, can you trust me with your piece? Because I would get this long laundry list of things that people would want me to have in the painting. Mm. And I would get so restricted. Oh, I got to make sure I've got all of these, items in the painting, and it would take away from some of that liberty you feel mm-hmm. as a creator. But little did I know that again, I was telling you, I almost feel like there's a bit of a spiritual experience involved in this with me. And that is that it was guiding me down a path that caused me to open up and paint things I'm not sure I ever would have considered painting. And it's expanded the breadth of what now I feel confident in doing.
Oh, that's a great story. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
We've touched on some of it already, but maybe we can dig into it a bit more in terms of what inspires your art. Where does it come from when it's not a commission?
Yeah, good question. And for me, it's an easy one. Of course, it's always it's life around you that inspires you. Like my grandkids inspire me, and my family and friends sometimes inspire me, but and nature inspires me. But the tried and true thing, I have a laundry list of, I got a long list of stuff that I want to paint, and it never seems to shorten because I always come up with new ideas. Yeah. But a lot of it is driven by music. Mm-hmm. As I was saying in the beginning about, combining art and music together, that has taken on a whole different level of meaning in my art, because I loved music as a kid so much. In my teen years, I listened to some just the great music of the 70s, 60s somewhat too, but I was more a teenager in the 70s. And great bands like the Eagles and Three Dog Night and Chicago. I mean, just so many great bands and great solo artists like James Taylor. I think you might have seen my recent piece at the gallery. I did Sweet Baby James.
Yep.
So I get caught being inspired so much by music that I'll either paint an iconic musician like JT or Aretha or Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. I've done tons of these kinds of iconic, and they have to pass the iconic test to make it into a painting. But then so many other paintings are the idea is generated by a song. And Tequila Sunrise, that I think you might have seen recently at the gallery, was an old Eagles tune,
Yep.
And I'll be listening to music, some of this old music, and I'll go, man, I love that song. That just deserves a painting. And you just let your imagination then run wild, and how the song makes you feel is what, as how the paint goes on the canvas. And so I'm lucky that way, that I don't often find myself going, I don't know what to paint now. I do find myself going, well, I could paint that, or I could paint this, or I could paint that, and trying to make a decision about it. You probably, as an artist, run into the same thing. I guess we all do to some degree. The world offers so many ideas around us, that often it's the toughest thing is just to decide what are you going to get started with? What's next? And commissions kind of keep me lined up pretty steady. I usually have somewhere between 7 and 12 commissions in front of me. And fortunately, I try to be careful to pace myself. So I'm doing maybe a couple of commissions a month, and also trying to do some originals in there, trying to mix it up, because I'm, trying to stay balanced. So I've got stuff at the shows and the festivals and things that I do to show people. So there's a business balance to all of that.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Throughout this conversation, you've been great about sharing some thoughts and advice, but specifically, as you look back on your career, what advice would you give to an artist just starting out?
Well, I think first is to assess your own. I mean, if you're going to be the kind of artist that you want to be, you want this to be your vocation, it's different. It's different than if you want to be a hobby artist, right? I mean, if you want to be a hobby artist, there's some overlap. But if you're thinking like a business person, then you have to realize that your art business is just like any other business in the regard of it's a business. And so you have to think like a business person, which means, accounting, keeping the books, figuring out the marketing. Who are you selling to? Who's your audience? What's your style? And how marketable is that style? Those kinds of questions I think you have to ask and answer. Sometimes you don't have all those answers yourself, and you have to do a little, like I was saying earlier, do a little market research, if you will. And that is try to get some real, up in the beginning, some real honest, like diehard, assessments of your work. Create some work and start seeing, and everybody's eye is different, right? I mean, it's truly the case. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Not everybody likes what I do. Some people do, some people don't. Some people like some other artist's work, which is wonderful. It's what makes the world go round, right? And but I think you need to have at least a general idea that what I'm creating, what my lens thinks is beauty or is worthwhile, is something that someone else is going to see that way. And so I think in that regard, sometimes family and friends can be good about that, especially if you really like ask them to give you some steady opinions and some strong assessments. Don't worry about hurting my feelings, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also good to get people that don't know you to look at your work. And then I think that helps to guide, because in the beginning, I think the hardest part for me was not the marketing and the business stuff, because I was kind of comfortable with being a marketer and a business person, because I had been all my adult career. The part I was uncomfortable with was, is my art, can I create art that is sellable? Will people buy it? And at what prices will they buy it? And you're assessing all of that stuff from a business point of view. And some artists have difficulty getting comfortable with all of that. Well, I'll just paint what I want to paint, and we'll just see how it shakes out. And to some degree, that's true. And I have paintings that I'll paint, and they'll be sitting around for months before the right pair of eyes see it. And sometimes years. I have some of those old paintings I did way back 10 years ago that are still sitting around, and it's always wonderful when somebody goes, "Hey, do you still have that painting?" Yeah. Yeah, well, I'd like to buy that. And that happened to me recently, a painting that I painted nearly 10 years ago. But if you believe in what you're doing, if you have a really strong belief in yourself and your own skill level, and you're always trying to get better, right? Which is the other thing I'd tell any new artist starting out is just keep getting better. Just keep experimenting, keep exploring, keep trying new things. If you're doing acrylic, try oil. If you're doing oil, try watercolors. If you're doing watercolors, try pastels. Look at different techniques. And of course, because of the internet, there's just, you can go to YouTube and find a YouTube video in just about any medium and any style that there is out there. Obviously, you can also, take workshops and so forth from local artists, but invest yourself. If you love art, that's the thing. I think you have to really ask yourself, why are you doing art? I'm doing art. In the beginning, I wanted to do art because I knew I just had a love for it. I just really had a passion for art. What I did not know, Chip, was how it was going to connect me to people. Yeah. And the impact that art would have on other people besides me. Like I could create a guitar abstract and I could love the heck out of it. But somebody who, is not into that wouldn't have any kind of, I didn't think they'd have any kind of thrill about it. But what I found was that in creating all kinds of different works of art, that sometimes it touches a nerve with somebody. Sometimes it reaches down and grabs something down in their soul, down in their past, a reminder of someone they knew, their mother, their, someone who passed away. The connection to art in our soul is a powerful, powerful thing. I did not realize that in the beginning. It's something I've learned and have become even more entrenched in how much I love creating art. I think there's something in us, in all of us, maybe not necessarily as a painter, that we are given, it's in our DNA to create. And that might be to create a great home for your children and your spouse. It might be to be creative at work in some kind of way. But I think we forget that as we grow up a little bit. because when we're kids, we're always creating things. We're creating games in the yard with our friends, and so as what was it, Picasso that said, um, when we were kids, we were all artists.
Hmm.
The trouble is, how do we stay that way when we grow up?
Yeah.
And fortunately, because I've got a really supportive wife and family, I've been able to pursue it and go full blast. And it's made the difference, I think. I think if I'd just been a hobby artist, I wouldn't have had the same impact, certainly in my own life and in the lives of others as well.
I can relate to that for sure. Well, our last question is, what artist or artists should we go check out?
There's a lot of artists, of course. I guess I would start with my favorite impressionist artist is probably Degas. Monet and Degas, and I sort of describe my style as sort of a modern post-impressionism style with a hint of abstraction in there. But Degas would be certainly one I would point to. And just went to the Van Gogh exhibition not too long ago. That was pretty phenomenal. Way ahead of his time, using texture in his paintings, which I love to do. So I'm thankful for those guys leading the way into places that art had never been before. On the contemporary scene, there's an artist, Jacob Dine, Dhein. I see him on Instagram. I don't know Jacob, but he's a phenomenal oil painter, and uses texture in his paintings as well. But stylistically, just hits me right in the heart. It's really, really good. Along with him, Henry Asensio is another fantastic oil painter that's been around for many years. Dramatic scenes with portraiture, and also very texture, also an oil painter, texture oriented painter, with a strong degree of realism in parts of it, and in other parts of it abstract, which I'm drawn to that sort of combination. And on landscapes and those kind of things, there's an encaustic painter I like a lot, Kurt Butler, which I think he might be a South Carolina artist, North Carolina or South Carolina. I've never met Kurt, but again, in terms of his color work is phenomenal. He'll use colors you would not even dream of using in a painting of a landscape. So you might see green in his skies, but somehow it works. And but his encaustic style with oil paint is just amazing. A lot of marsh scenes and those kinds of seascape, landscape type things. So there's several there that I look up to and follow a little bit along the way.
Well, thank you for those recommendations. And we want to make sure that listeners know where they can see and find your work. I know you've got a website, dancampbellart.com, but where else can folks find your work?
Well, that's always the good, tried and true place to find my original art. And if you go to that website, you can also go to a print menu that allows you to click on my print site, which I sell lots of prints as well, in addition to my original pieces. So there's always kind of something for everybody to choose from. I'm very strongly connected on Facebook. So Dan Campbell, Contemporary Artist, is my fan page, and you can follow me there. I'm also on Instagram, Dan Campbell Art 99 on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn as well. You just look up Dan Campbell you'll find me on LinkedIn. So I'm not as visible there as I am on Facebook. Facebook has been probably the strongest in terms of carrying on conversations with people and using it as a visual medium to actually sell your work. But my websites are always, it's always easy to find me there.
All right. Well, thank you all again for joining us for another episode of the Artist Spotlight. And thank you, Dan, for making this a wonderful conversation.
Chip, pleasure, my friend. Thank you for being an active artist and contributing to the art community around us. It's a pleasure.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us. This has been the Artist Spotlight with Chip Freund. Find accompanying blog posts at chipfreundphoto.com/blog, and you may subscribe to our show on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like listening.